All right. Hey, guys. Another week. Checks Over Strikes podcast. Checks in your name. No strikes against it. And this is our fourth episode. And we have a special guest today. And she goes by the name of Micah Dell-Miller. And she is the owner of Cope Counseling. So we wanted to really bring somebody in with the expertise when it comes to, I know everyone here is counseling. So, she's in the mental health realm, and we really want to get somebody on the show that we can kind of discuss mental health and, some of the stigmas that are behind it. And in addition to that, also discuss, why in our community, why there is such a stigma, and I think, with mental health, it's important and it's something that everyone should know. But before we get into everything, let's just introduce the Checks Over Strikes podcast, the host. So my name is Craig, and I'm one half of Checks Over Strikes.
And I go by Dean, the second half. And then we got our boy behind the mic, or the camera, I should say.
What's up? Jason in the building.
Yeah, and he is our director / fixer-upper / yeah, he's just that guy.
I'm just here.
Yeah, so like I said, we have Micah here, and I'll let Micah introduce herself and introduce her company. Go ahead, Micah.
Hey guys, thank you. Thanks, Checks Over Strikes. So my name is Micah Dell-Miller, as Craig would have let you guys know. And I am a clinical social worker and psychotherapist with my own private practice called Cope Counseling Toronto. And essentially what Cope Counseling Toronto is, it's focused on providing a safe space for individuals, for couples, and for groups to heal, to start and kind of go through a healing journey through psychotherapy, through talk therapy, and, understanding themselves in order to essentially be the best version of themselves. In terms of areas of specialty, I specialize in anti-Black racism, and essentially all of the mental health that is impacted by anti-Black racism. So when we talk about that, we talk about the depression that comes along with it, the trauma, the anxiety. I also specialize with children and youth mental health, anxiety, and criminal or youth justice.
Perfect. Great.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great intro. And I noticed something on your website, and I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
And I thought it was something that was key.
Mm-hmm.
And it said, you have, what is your client's promise, or your promise to your client? Can you discuss that a little bit and what that means? Because I think that is so key, especially in the line of work that you're doing. Can you kind of dig deep as to why you have that on your website?
Because I have it on my website because I'm extremely client focused, right? And having that client promise allows my clients to know that it's a client-centered and client-focused practice. And it's an individualistic practice, right? So essentially that client promise is so that people can, personalize it, personalize the services and personalize and say, hey, wait a minute, this person is not essentially focused on business. She's not focused on therapy. She's not focused on counseling. She's focused on me, right? And essentially that's why that promise to the client, in terms of being focused on them, focused on the individualized treatment plan. And so that people out there understand that this practice is client-centered, which means that it is all about the client when you come see me for therapy.
Kudos. I think that's important. And I think that people need to know that when they come in a space such as your space, that, it's confidential and it's something that is going to be, it's a relationship that's developed between you and your client.
Exactly.
It's important. So again, we have some questions we want to ask, and, there's certain things that I think that, as people, as individuals, we're going through a pandemic. You and I talk about it. We talk about it with Jason. Why is mental health so important in this new normalcy, such as the pandemic? Why is it so important?
Well, I would start by saying that, we've definitely seen an increase in mental health issues and mental illness in terms of the pandemic. More specifically with anxiety, a lot of people are dealing with anxiety. They've never had anxiety in the past, and all of a sudden they're experiencing signs and symptoms of anxiety, and that is related to health. So we have all of these people who are essentially afraid to get COVID, right? So persons are doing things like, that kind of hypervigilance, staying in their home, washing their hands every 5 seconds, which is the things that we are supposed to do, yes, but it is creating a sense of anxiety, right? It's creating a sense of anxiousness. There's also mental health issues being developed over so many different things, over, partner relationships, right? People are in the house more together. Partners are in the house more. They're more in each other's faces. The outlets that were there before are no longer there. You can no longer pick up yourself and, go play ball. You can no longer pick up yourself and maybe go to the mall and release some of that stress, right? And so, we know that partner relationships, domestic abuse has gone up tremendously, right? The kids being home, for the parents out there, that is not something that's normalized for a lot of the parents. The children are home, they're in your face, you're having to kind of maneuver between work, between school, and, figure out, as you said, this new norm. And so coupled with all of these things, mental health issues are increasing, So it's so very important that we look at new coping strategies, that we look at ways around the pandemic. We learn how to cope within this pandemic, because this pandemic has definitely increased mental health issues.
And what are some of the signs that someone may be suffering from mental health? Like, how can I, if my brother, my sister, my friend, if, what are the signs that you can kind of see that someone's going through that, mental health or even depression? So I can kind of say, hey, I have Micah, or I have, someone that you could speak to. Like, how would I approach that without, being that I'm not going through it per se, how can I approach it that, the person feels comfortable talking about
it? So I would say that, every mental illness or mental health issue have different signs and symptoms, right? So anxiety is going to look different to depression, is going to look different to, bipolar disorder, is going to look different from, learning disabilities. So, is going to look different from substance abuse, suicidal ideations. So whatever you may be dealing with, things are going to look different because there's different signs and symptoms for the different, particular issues or illnesses. But I think, there's definitely some, overlapping signs and symptoms. So, we can look for things like withdrawal, somebody not essentially associating into things that they were interested into before. You can look for things like, someone having panic attacks, right? So that's like tied to anxiety. So if you see someone, all of a sudden starting to have panic attacks, where they have these, impending feelings of doom, heart racing, hands sweating, afraid of doom, you can kind of look for stuff like that. Again, you can look for withdrawal from activities that they were used to. So, if somebody's, staying in bed more constant, more frequent than they would, if you notice they're not really maybe taking care of their hygiene routines, when normal routines appear to be off. So if you know the person and okay, this is this person's normal routines, but you see, we usually like to give it like a 2-week mark. So if you notice, this person has been off and they've been off for about 2 weeks plus, then that's when okay, there's a conversation needs to be had, or maybe I need to try to seek help for this person, And then the secondary part of your question, how can you maybe approach them where, to make them feel comfortable and not make them feel judged? The main thing is being an ear. The main thing is being a listening ear, non-judgmental listening ear. What is something I can help you with? Do you need me right now? You want to ask those particular type of questions, right? And you want to stay away from being judgmental. You want to stay away from being, from saying things like, get over it, or, that happened so long ago, get out of bed, it's all in your head. You want to stay away from terms like that do not validate the person's feelings, right? So you want to validate their feelings, you want to validate their emotions. And the way to do that is essentially by asking what they need. You want to talk to me, and again, it's really about trying to validate what they're going through.
Interesting. I don't know again, I don't know if I could say examples, but
Mhm.
I know for me, there's situations that, I'm not always good. And,
Mhm.
know me to always be jovial, laughing and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think we all go through things. And I think one of the things that I don't want to get people confused with is that, unfortunately, I may talk to Dean, but Dean is not a professional expert. So I know a lot of people tend to lean on their friends
Mhm. Mhm.
or for guidance. And it's not, I'm not saying that you cannot, get guidance from a friend, but a friend is usually biased to certain situations from what I see. And at the end of the day, why is it important to seek out someone that's professional as opposed to, me leaning on Jason or me leaning on Dean?
Mhm. Mhm. So us as therapists, we love to have, like, when a person has social supports. So it's a good thing when you have close friends and close family in your lives that you can talk to and share things with, and you have people to support you. It's a great thing. We love social supports. It's actually a risk factor when someone doesn't have social supports and they don't have people around them to kind of fill them with joy and support them and love them and essentially give people or give us the things that we need socially. So social supports are great to have, friends, family, and things like that. In terms of seeking a professional when it comes to advice and when it comes to coping strategies and things like that, as you rightfully said, Craig, there's that unbiased. Okay, there's that unbiased, and so your friends and your family at times may give you advice that's biased, because they know you and they love you and they care about you emotionally. So they're tied to you emotionally and they just want to see the best for you, right? So what they think is the best for you may not be the best for your mental health at the time, right? Kind of similar to what I was saying earlier, a friend might say something like, it's all in your head. Or they might say something like, just get over it. Or, your friends might want to take you out and, bring you out and take you out and have a good time with you because that's what they think is going to make you feel better. But essentially, let's say you're dealing with social anxiety, right? No, that's not going to make you feel better, right? Because that's the same thing that you're feeling anxious about. That's your trigger, right? And so, again, having some social supports is great, but there's a difference between seeing a professional, because a professional will be able to make that initial assessment to find out, okay, what are the issues, and again, create an unbiased treatment plan going forward, right? And so this is why I think that therapy is for everyone, right? There's no, you need therapy, therapy is for everybody to just get that neutral, unbiased assessment done, and a treatment plan that is focused on, what is best for the needs of that client. But we love social supports. We love social supports.
Okay. That's some
Mhm.
gems you're dropping, some good gems, some great gems.
For
Um,
sure.
I I think I think it's very important when you say seek out professional help because, again, your friend or your family or whoever may be, they're not trained and they're not experts and they can't necessarily give you coping strategies that you need to help you get through your or guide you through your situation. So you hear that, guys? Micah is your person. She is your professional expert. Listen to Micah. Yeah. Another question, and I think it's something that I think it's mostly in every Black community itself.
Mhm.
Why is there such a stigma? Why is it always? And we're all Caribbean backgrounds here. It's a situation in which that if you're talking to somebody, people think
Mhm.
that, oh, you're crazy, or why are you talking to somebody? Go sit down. Those type of things. And can this cultural bias be removed?
Um, so yay, I'm so happy that we got to the Black people part. Because that's what I love to talk about. I love to talk about mental health in the Black community. Um, so not saying I don't love to talk about anything else, just saying, it's the expertise. So I like to go there.
All in
Um,
areas, all in areas.
but in terms of, stigma in the Black community, I would say there's multiple different reasons. One of them being culture, right? It's not our culture to understand mental health. It's our culture to understand something different. So a lot of times we don't use the correct language. We haven't learned to use the correct right. We've been cultured into thinking something separate and apart from mental health. So if we notice that someone's displaying signs and symptoms of mental health, we might say, that's obia, right? Which is kind of like witchcraft, right? So we might say, this exactly. We might say, that's obia, or we might say, call somebody crazy and be very judgmental and say, it's drugs that have them that way, or we're very quick to be judgmental. I just spent 2.5 years living in the Caribbean, Trinidad, woo woo, and it's such a different culture when it comes to mental health and mental health services, and the way that people think about mental health. And so I said, okay, this is the background. If this is where we come from, of course, this is how we're going to think, going back to that cultural aspect, especially, when it comes time to treating mental health. The number one way to treat mental health in the Caribbean is the church, right? Is religion. Not saying that's not a good thing, right? It is research states that, people who are tied to a religious base, or people who are tied to, a higher being or spirituality, that can improve their mental health. So I'm not saying that it's a negative thing. I'm just saying that, the belief that mental health can be prayed away, we kind of have to, do your prayers. And I'm not saying don't pray. Power of prayer is amazing. But what I'm also saying is that it's time for us to understand mental illness, understand the signs and symptoms that you said earlier, and start seeking that professional help, right? Because, for those of us who believe in God, God gave us those talents, and God gave us the gift and the strength and the knowledge to be able to help other individuals who are dealing with issues, right? Just like you would go to the doctor if you're dealing with a physical issue, same kind of thing. If you're dealing with a mental illness, it's time to start going to the mental health professionals, right? So that's kind of one area. The next area in terms of stigma is a lack of awareness, right? I read the other day that one of the authors I was reading the other day compared it to the lack of financial literacy in our community, and I think that's very fitting. So, you guys know all about that, is kind of that lack of financial literacy in our community, and, the impacts of that. It's kind of the same thing. There's a lack of awareness and a lack of mental health literacy in our community, right? And so if we don't know and we don't understand it, how are we going to treat it correctly? How are we going to address it correctly? How are we going to address it effectively if we don't even understand what's going on, right? So it goes back to that lack of awareness as well. And then it's institutionalized and systemic racism. Anti-Black racism is probably the number one reason why stigma is in our community, and the number one reason why we have so many mental health issues in our community, I would say, is anti-Black racism, systemic and institutionalized racism. Yes. Oh, and you asked if the stigma can be broken. I think the question was twofold, right?
That's correct.
So the second part of the question, can it be broken? Yes, I think it can be. I'm going to be faithful and say yes. I'm an optimist, right? So I always look at things from the positive, and I always look at things from the good, right, side of things. And yes, so I'm going to say yes, it can be broken, but it's going to take work. Right? It's not just going to be broken just like that. And I can't say that it's going to happen in this generation or the next, right? But it's very important that we educate ourselves. We create awareness, we create understanding, we start understanding ourselves. We stop paying attention to media and who media says Black people are, because what that is creating is cognitive dissonance, because the media is telling you you're one person and your mind is telling you and you're another person. Of course, that is going to create mental health issues, right? So we need to educate ourselves. We need to know ourselves. We need to read. Wish
I had a horn.
Exactly.
Something, a bomb,
Right?
a clue bomb, or something.
I can't stress it enough. We need to read. We need to educate ourselves about mental illness. Learn the signs and symptoms of depression, of anxiety, of bipolar disorder, of schizophrenia. Learn about suicidal ideations. Learn about it. Understand it. Learn about how anti-Black racism has created trauma in our community, right? And empower yourselves through knowledge and through understanding, and then pass it on to the next generation. So for the parents out there, don't learn it for yourselves and keep the knowledge to you. No, talk to your children. Buy your children age-appropriate books that talk about mental health, that talk about stigma in the Black community. Teach your children so we break that cycle of intergenerational trauma, right? We don't pass it on. We break the cycle. So I would say, yes, it can be broken, but we have to ensure that we're putting in the work and doing those things that we have to do in order to break the cycle, because it's not just going to be broken. We have to do the work.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it's a conversation I don't have a lot with my children. You know what I mean? I think I need to be having these conversations a little bit more.
Yes.
I don't think that, they're just too young to understand.
Yes. Yes.
They're never too young.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Never too young.
No.
I think that
Yeah.
it's a conversation it needs to have. I'm not
For
sure
sure.
if like Dean and I grew up in different areas. So I'm not sure if it's a situation in which that, again, it's something that we just was never taught to us. We kind of just bring those bags and those burdens and we just wear it.
I feel as if in our community, a lot of our learning lessons are from TV. So whatever we see on TV, that's what we pick up. It's like, as a man in the household, you got to be the sole provider. Men are not allowed to cry. Men are not allowed to talk about their feelings. So I feel a lot of the lessons that we learned is based off of TV instead of us trying to find that knowledge, as Micah was saying, picking up a book and reading about these things to learn more how we can cope with these things and how to identify these things. So I would put place a lot of the blame with, not just to say that that we didn't understand, but it's where I grew up. It's like everything I learned was from TV. And it's only after I got older as an adult where it's like I noticed these things inside myself, where it's like I can't rely on TV to tell me how to live my life. I got to go out there and seek help, right? Like for me, I have a therapist. I make sure that I go every so often so that I can talk about these things, because I'm what do you call it? Introvert. So I don't really like to go out there and just talk to any and everybody, right? But at the same time, I knew I had stuff that was building up in me that was breaking me down inside, where it's like, yo, I need to go out there and find somebody to talk to.
Excellent. So I'm really glad to hear that, Dean, that you have a therapist. That's amazing. And thanks
Thank
for
you.
even sharing that with us. And yeah, you're very much right in terms of, that what you see kind of on TV is what you emulate. And again, it goes back to kind of anti-Black racism. We were stripped of our identity a long time ago, right? And stripping us of our identity, what happens now? So, a part of slavery and a part of the plan of initially was to strip us of our identity. And now the current plan is, okay, so put this identity in front of them. So take away the identity and then show them who they should be, right? And so we have very common characters of the Black woman. We have common characters of the Black man, the Black woman, this ghettoized female who, has a certain type of look, has a certain type of persona, right? And then we have the Black man who's either a baller or a gangster. We have these personas that were placed in front of us so that, okay, we don't no longer have this identity, full of rich culture, royalty, identifying as kings and queens and, daughters and sons of creation. And rather than identifying as that, we're going to identify with who we see on TV, which is this, baller or hardcore male figure, or this ghettoized female, or like the nanny female and things like that, right?
Yeah, perfect.
You touched on a few things. I don't know. Jay looks like he wants to jump in here. I don't know if he.
Oh no, no.
Okay.
Well, no, but everything you're saying makes total sense, right? I was actually listening to a podcast over the weekend there, just talking about what you guys were saying about how do you teach this stuff to your children. And what they're saying is you also have to talk about there's times that Black people were kings, and our history is not all slavery. We tend to just talk about those times, but we have great histories, and we've done a lot. We've contributed to the society significantly, and I think we just get trapped into the slavery and why we're over here and stuff like that. So I'm a big proponent of everything, and I think a lot of it is education and finances. I hear a lot about what you're saying. I think some of the mental illness, especially in the men, I think it comes a lot about income. It's harder to make a living. And, as a man, it come across as like you have to take care of everything and do everything. But like in society, it's a dual income world right now, and you need partnerships, or you need other people to help you. So it's like that knowing that you need help and asking for help. I think that's a lot to do with mental illness, because a lot of times we don't ask for the help when we need it. But just knowing that the world is a place where you need help. You can't do nothing alone. And I think that's the first step, right? And from there, I think we can grow. But a lot of it for me is just, we need to break the cycle of the dependency on, just the way old structures are built, and not seeking information. So I love, like, obviously what's coming on in this age with the internet and the podcast, and what Dean and Craig are doing, and the stuff that you're talking about. Like, it just needs to be more out there. I just think a lot of the times things were like taboo, and we just have to be more open to talk about, like, Dean saying he has a therapist. Me and my fiance were talking about going to therapy. We don't have no problems, but why don't we go and at least talk to somebody, as we're embarking on a new journey with marriage and stuff like that. So it's just important to talk to people.
Yep, communication's key, man.
And I just want to say, like, all these gems are being dropped. Like, our technical director, Jason, I need a clue bomb. I need something to like give those emojis.
I have this. You want to hear
or
this?
some fire sign. I want some fire or something. Or give me some unks. Give me some Egyptian signs.
How about this?
Yeah, give me something. These are gems we're dropping. It's not a boring conversation. This is something that everyone needs to know. Like, we're being vulnerable, and that's the thing. Like, as Black men, we're not vulnerable enough to have these discussions, right? Because it's not cool. It's not the in thing. It's not the right thing, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone, Micah, you just said it. Dean said it. Money, partnership, income, and it's a perfect segue into my next questions, because what is the correlation with money and mental health?
There's a huge correlation, right? And so I kind of mentioned something earlier about, that kind of lack of awareness in terms of financial literacy, and again, it's the same kind of thing with the lack of awareness with mental health literacy, right? Again, going back to us reading, the reason why I know Checks Over Strikes would have, one of the first projects was that book, Don't Be a Waste You. And, thank you very much for dropping that book, guys, because essentially, again, it goes back to both in one, getting your mind right, so you can get your finances right? So reading and putting that knowledge and understanding in your mind so that you can kind of manifest the things that you want, out of life in terms of your finances. And so, the direct correlation, it's like a cycle, if you're financially not in a good place, that directly affects your mental health not being in a good place, and vice versa. If your mental health is not in a good place, it directly affects your finances not being in a good place, right? Because, financially, if things are off, you're going to experience stress. You're going to experience higher levels of stress, which create higher levels of anxiety, which, if not treated and addressed effectively, can, spiral out into worse conditions, right? And then again, kind of, if your mental health is off, you're not essentially really going to be prioritizing finances, right? You're not really going to be making smart decisions in terms of, or I guess educated decisions in terms of your finances. One of the things when I was doing some research, it was saying, one of the books that I read said, never spend when you're in, like, if you're somebody who lives with depression, never spend when you're going through an episode, right? Never make financial decisions when you're going through an episode, right? You might make decisions that you did not want to make. You made decisions based on your emotion.
I got a blop.
No, you want that?
Yeah. No, it's good that you brought that up, because a lot of people, especially in the pandemic, they're on Amazon and they're like going buck wild on it. It's like, that right now Amazon's doing a lot of advertisement. Get Amazon Prime for 30 days. And the moment they get that 30 days and they're free shipping, they're like, I'm going to continue buying. And Amazon is built around things like this, where it's like, they're using AI technology to keep you engaged with their website and just continue to buy. Because it's like, after you get the Amazon Prime, then they're sending you coupons. Hey, here's $5 off. And it's like, I got $5 off. That's $10 I'm saving. But overall, they just want you to continue to spend. And if you're not in a good space, you're just going to go crazy, especially when you have a credit card as well, right?
Exactly. So it's all about that headspace, right? We want to be making positive decisions in terms of our money and making sure that our mental health is on point so we can make those positive decisions. So again, there's a direct correlation between money and mental health. And I guess there's a direct correlation between cope and checks over stress, right?
Oh, yeah, and I'm glad that you kind of segue into that, because we got to tell the people, where can we find co-counseling? What programs you offer, and where can we find you on social media?
So in terms of programs offered right now, it is individual, couples, and group counseling, right? And that's kind of at the personal level. So let's say, you're dealing with some mental health issues, we do a nice consultation before even committing to therapy to kind of find out what some of the issues are and even find out if I'm the right fit, right? Because therapy is really about a right fit, right? One of the things that I do, let's say, is that like when I have a young teenage male client, some of the times I refer out to my male colleagues, right? Where they can kind of get that relation and relatability, so it all depends on that right fit. So, that's kind of on the personal level. I also do trainings and workshops as it relates to, mental health, anti-Black racism, and kind of, again, the correlation between the two, because again, that's kind of my expertise, is that correlation between anti-Black racism and mental health. And so I do trainings and workshops and discussions and panel discussions, regarding those things and those issues. And in terms of programming, I also have a program called The Ultimate Experience. That is with my partner, Zayfit 416, and she's a fitness instructor. And we have a program every Thursday that we run called The Ultimate Experience. And what that is, it's focused kind of on the mind and the body. So it's a very holistic program that we run to kind of get that holistic feel. Because again, I kind of do the mental health piece, she does the fitness piece, and then we've come together to create that program. So those are the services. In terms of where can you find me, all over the internet, right? We're in the digital era now, guys. So we kind of have to come to terms with this is what it is, the digital era. I'm still going to put it in there that we need to read and make sure that you're closing those screens down sometimes to put your eyes in a book, especially right before bed. It's very important. But you can find me all over the internet. My website is www.copecounselingtt.org. My email address, micah.dell@copecounselingtt.org. You can find me on IG. I'm all over IG, always doing something new, on IG. And my handle is @cope_counseling. Type Cope Counseling into Google, Cope Counseling Toronto, type it into Google, you'll find me. What else? And for those of you guys who essentially, maybe you're not really into the digital era, maybe you weren't born into the digital era, maybe the digital era is not a part of your time, you can just call me. 647-807-2948 is my phone number, and you can reach me there, and that's how we do our consultations. So I can be found, as I said, most people know how to use Google nowadays. Cope Counseling Toronto, put it in Google, and you will find Micah Dell-Miller, clinical psychotherapist and social worker.
So that's perfect. Honestly, truly, we're always blessed to get the gems from you, Micah. And you forgot one place where you could be found.
Oh, did I forget?
Oh, yeah, because Checks Over Strikes has a money management program, money management method in which we use Mrs. Micah Dell-Miller to help us break down the correlation with money and financial literacy. So it's another program where you can find her. She's dope. She knows what she's saying. She knows what she's doing. So it's something that, Dean and I, we figured it's something that is needed. Mental awareness is important, and the correlation between mental health and money is so big. And we introduce it in our program because we know it's important. Because, as Micah mentioned, without the right mindset, your finances is not going to be where you need it to be.
Most definitely.
For sure. And thank you guys for inviting me in on the money management program, because, I think it's wonderful. I think collaboration and partnership is so important in our community, and kind of using each other, and using the different skills that we have to each other to bring the information to our community, and bring that correct information to our community, especially with people who look like them, because I think that's one of the things that, is so important for us is, to get the information and to get the services and to be able to give the services, so where people feel comfortable. Again, not saying we're not open to working with everybody else outside of the Black community, 100%. But at the end of the day, we got to be here for our community, because who else is going to be?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Better, man. So this wraps up our fourth episode of Checks Over Strikes podcast. Checks in your name, no strikes against it. You guys tune in next week. Again, we're always dropping some great gems and talking to a whole bunch of different people, that help contribute to the society that we're in, especially the Black community. So signing off, Checks Over Strikes, your community heroes. Craig and Dean. Peace.